Good morning. Happy Monday. Okay. I hope you guys had a great weekend. There's Film Scoring Monday where we look at a scene, I take out the music, you guys, come up with something. You either make your original mixes, you go on YouTube or Spotify, or you get out the old cassettes and you find what music would work, just as well for the scene. We've been doing this for years now. And I thought I'd run out after a few months, but look at us already a few years later, a few years in, and this is great. There's a monthly prize. Everybody knows. Please, if there's new people that are wondering, I'm always available to talk, after class, and we will, continue to do this. We look at usually big movies, whether not big budget, but whether they're independent or important, historically important movies. It's a way to show film history, film music, all that kind of stuff, and then a way for you guys to have fun. Okay, so having said all that, we're going to look at the very classic 1976 film, Taxi Driver. Taxi Driver is an American movie directed by Scorsese. We did Raging Bull 1980 years ago with that beautiful black and white boxing where he chose the opera, the opera music scene. We did that a long time ago, so we know Scorsese. This is a psychological thriller about alienation, about loneliness, about very dark, dramatic movie written by Paul Schrader. So Scorsese and Schrader have teamed up a lot. But this was their first one that got off the ground. And this stars the great De Niro, right? Everyone knows De Niro. Jodie Foster as a 12-year-old, Sybil Shepherd. A very stacked, good cast. But this was almost before they were, they're hugely famous now. These people, they were, kind of making their bones here. So Scorsese as well, too. I mean, this is like his third movie he had done. Not a writer, but he's an auteur in the sense of it's his vision, right? So we talked about Scorsese as being part of the new Hollywood system. Comes right around 67, 68 with Bonnie and Clyde, right? That's when the studios, they're not studio films anymore. They're made by personal auteurs. That comes from French New Wave, right? So we know the French New Wave with Godard and Truffaut. They're doing that in the early 60s, late 50s, early 60s, and then by the late 60s, you get Americans saying, hey, the French were really into cool stuff and low budgets, and studios would start giving, and then of course with Easy Rider, right? So we know that's new Hollywood. We need to recap this stuff. Scorsese's part of that because the budget was just it was under $2 million for this. It makes $28 million. So this was hugely successful. So studios were like, okay, maybe these guys like Scorsese, Arthur Penn, maybe these guys have something. What is Taxi Driver? It really is. He's just driving around in a taxi, right? But it's much more. Travis Bickle's a very famous film character. He's a veteran, so he's got PTSD. He's suffering with depression, insomnia, and he's a taxi driver. And you see his kind of how he just deteriorates as he works, every night as a cab driver. And so he's a disturbed person, and this is also, reflection on the war and all that kind of stuff. This is something De Niro will do again, as we've seen, because we did look at Deer Hunter, but he's just haunting the streets, and he's kind of watching society happen as opposed to being a part of it. And then he meets Sybil Shepherd and wants to become involved, in something politically important, and then sees the filth on the street, and particularly with a young prostitute, Jodie Foster, who's 12 years old, and goes in to save her and creates and kills people to justify, the horrible things going on in New York City. And he kind of comes out a hero at the end. Very, very dark movie, hugely successful after that, after it comes out. Same year as Rocky, too. So, we're getting Rocky as well, not two. So we're getting movies that are personal but a little, daring. And so who does he get? Scorsese gets Bernard Herrmann. What's Herrmann doing? This is the last movie. He dies, like a few hours before before the score is done. Bernard Herrmann starts his film business with Citizen Kane, one of the best movies ever, Orson Welles, and then he ends with Scorsese. So what a career he's had. We looked a lot at Bernard Herrmann, I mean, because mostly every Hitchcock, Psycho, North by Northwest, one of the greatest film composers of all time, uses the saxophone in this, uses a lot of brass instruments, and it's a jazz score. So we've looked at westerns, comedic western, epic western last few weeks. Now we're going to look at kind of smooth jazz. First, we'll watch the scene just so we know what we're talking about. This doesn't need a setup. He's a lonely taxi driver suffering from PTSD. Just terrible scenarios, because these are real stories. Real people experience these things. And so, so you don't need much of a setup. And jazz is a very good score for loneliness, right? A lot of jazz musicians were lonely. Practicing by yourself in a room is very lonely all day. So a lot of jazz musicians had suffered from a lot of loneliness, as opposed to playing with band members. You play with the band, but that's a little different. Okay, so let's look at the scene with the beautiful score by Bernard Herrmann. So just a super melodic, great score with that alto saxophone, right? I mean, Ronnie Lang supposedly was the saxophonist on that. So gorgeous and odd, right? I mean, if you would think, would that work? I don't know. Would this theme work? I remember seeing the movie the first time and thinking how much I loved the music to this. But I was like, I don't know if it works with the movie. It doesn't matter because it is what it is. But you would think it would be a really gritty, dark score, but it's like this kind of romantic, darkly romantic in a way. Way different than Pink Panther, because we use the saxophone and listen to the saxophone, and that, in the 60s. This is the 70s, and this is, a jazz score. So let's take a look at the scene just, without that score. So, I mean, not as good. I mean, you could have a scene with just ambient sound and stuff like that, but it's, it's film scoring class. It's not just film Foley class. So I put in the Foley of the sounds and stuff. So think about what piece of music could fit here. You don't have to use the saxophone if you don't want to, but make it, there's a lot of loneliness and longing in that piece of music. It's very romantic, but very painful, when you hear the saxophone playing, emotionally. So it's very emotional. So it's something emotionally, jazz-like. It's not In the Mood, it's not Glenn Miller, it's not big band. But a jazz score would be nice. We haven't done jazz in a lot, and it could be smooth jazz too. But don't make it bebop, it's got to be an emotional jazz piece, emotionally charged. That's what I'm trying to think of. So that's Taxi Driver. Get the results into me. Tomorrow would be good. Tuesday would be good, because it takes a while to compile these. So I appreciate that. Okay, we're going to have a great week. Just get the music into me and have a great rest of the day. Okay, bye.